Good evening, everybody. I'm Bill Russell, and I'm honored to serve as the Board Chair of Legal Services NYC. I'd like to welcome you on behalf of Legal Services NYC, its board, and its lawyers and staff to the 2021 Jazz for Justice Gala. This is the 16th year that we've hosted Jazz for Justice, and the second year that we've conducted it in a virtual format. We wished we could gather together in person tonight to celebrate the organization and its work, but unfortunately current circumstances prevent us from doing so. As conditions continue to improve, however, we're hopeful that we'll be able to gather together in person next year to celebrate Legal Services NYC and its mission. And in any event, we're all together in spirit, and we'll still be entertained by some terrific jazz performances. Before I leave this virtual podium, there are a number of people that I'd like to thank. First of all, I'd like to thank our terrific honorees, Martin Lebwohl, the Co-General Counsel of D.E. Shaw and Company, and Jay Johnson of Paul Weiss, for all that they've done to further the cause of access to justice, and for all the support that they've provided to Legal Services NYC. You'll be hearing a lot more about both of them and their contributions later in the program. I also want to thank our Executive Director, Ron Rasmussen, for his leadership of the organization, particularly during this past year that has presented so many challenges to Legal Services NYC and to the clients whom we serve. I'd like to thank the lawyers and staff at Legal Services NYC. We're here together this evening in large part to celebrate you and the tremendous work that all of you perform every day, helping more than 100,000 New Yorkers every year fight for their rights to obtain and enjoy the basic necessities of life. And as I noted, this has been a particularly challenging year, and you've all risen to meet those challenges and serve the needs of our clients when they've been particularly vulnerable. Finally, I'd like to thank all of you who've joined us here tonight to support the efforts of Legal Services NYC and the most important fight that any of us can engage in, the fight for justice. And now, please sit back and enjoy a performance by the incredibly talented Stanley Jordan.
My first thing to say was a reaction to Stanley Jordan, whose music, I hope you agree, was pretty cool. He's a brilliant guitarist. He's received 4 Grammy nominations, has been nominated for an NAACP Image Award, and as Los Angeles Times jazz critic Leonard Feather wrote, genius is a word often tossed around in musical circles, but it's been rightfully applied to Stanley Jordan. Tonight, you'll hear much more music and much more about our honorees, Jay Johnson and Martin Lebwohl. But I want to start by giving them my personal thanks. Jay, for leading the effort to reveal pervasive and sometimes shocking racism in our statewide court system through your work as Special Advisor on Equal Justice. And Martin, for your leadership in expanding the commitment of your attorneys and the corporate sector more broadly to address the many challenges faced by low-income New Yorkers through your pro bono work. My deep thanks to you both. This early spring, the warm weather seems to be beckoning us all to leave our homes, to move on to a future where we can see each other face to face, embrace friends and family members, and dial back just a bit the fear that has held all too many of us in its grip. We have hope again that we won't get sick, that our economy will rebound, and that life can finally return to a pre-COVID normal. But pre-COVID normal wasn't all that great for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. And even that normal was made much worse by the pandemic. As is often the case, those hit hardest have been people of color. Black families who've been hurt and held back by racism, immigrants who've been denied public benefits and other forms of emergency relief, and Asian families and individuals who've been harassed and attacked by hate mongers. And most all of our clients have been hurt badly by the digital divide, which has prevented hundreds of thousands of New York City kids from getting the educations that they need. More than 1.5 million New York City residents, most all of them poor, lack both home and mobile internet connectivity. They've been disconnected from much of the world that we take for granted. Talk about structural racism. The digital divide will cause low-income families and their neighborhoods to fall even further behind as the economic recovery continues to be based on technological advances in education and commerce. In this moment, as we all move forward with hope for a recovering city, we simultaneously face enormous challenges. Just this week, for example, the eviction moratorium was extended to August 31st, moving back the tsunami of evictions and foreclosures that's been predicted as hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers owe more than $2 billion in back rent and mortgage payments. But even progressive legislators say that the moratorium will not be extended again. The tsunami is still coming. And although we're thrilled to fight evictions through the city's historic Right to Counsel program, we know that even with lawyers by their side, tens of thousands of families may lose their foundation, their homes, as the city continues to move back to normal. Our systems of justice, our laws and courts and adversaries all work against our clients. As our honoree, Jay Johnson, noted in his report on the state court system, the sad picture that emerges is in effect a second-class system of justice for people of color in New York State. This is a moment that demands a strong and pronounced rededication to equal justice under law. Tonight, we celebrate and thank you all for renewing your dedication to justice and for helping us to ensure that our clients can keep their homes, their incomes, their safety from domestic violence, education for their kids, and healthcare for their families. But meeting those needs, as essential as they are, is just a starting point. We need to create a world where the essentials of life don't have to be fought for. A world with both justice and dignity for all. Joy Harjo, the current poet laureate of the United States, recently said, "What often follows periods of decay and destruction and chaos is rebuilding and renaissance, periods of fresh invention and thought, in art. That's what often emerges from the ruins. You see little plants, like after a fire, coming up from the char." So this is our chance. We are challenging ourselves, as we challenge all of you, to come up with fresh dedication and fresh invention in fighting to make a new normal that is better for our clients and their families. My deepest thanks to all of you for helping us continue our fight for justice on behalf of all New Yorkers, and my extra special thanks to our staff, who've shown incredible courage under fire during this past year. Take a look now at some of their powerful work.
Public housing is one of the few ways that people are able to have a subsidized rent for their apartment. Without public housing, a lot of people would simply just be pushed out of the city.
NYCHA tenants have a lot of obligations and responsibilities. One obligation and responsibility is to provide proof of income on an ongoing annual basis. It's not an easy thing to do. It requires getting documentation and submitting it, and frequently going to a management office where the person on the other side won't accept the papers or maybe is not even there.
My experience living in New York City housing is something that I will have considered very, very good. But however, the management style and the overwhelming inadequacies have turned NYCHA into something else. I haven't lived there for 24 years without any problem. It was very depressing because you don't know where you're going to live tomorrow, you don't know what is going to happen. It caused a lot of emotional depression.
Public housing tenants across the city, working class families, predominantly people of color, deserve to live with dignity in their own homes. And to the extent that the New York City Housing Authority is not affording them that dignity, we have an obligation at Legal Services to get NYCHA to really clean its act.
For all of our plaintiffs here, their income lowered, and they went to NYCHA asking them to lower their rent accordingly. NYCHA either ignored their request or didn't lower their rent correctly, and then NYCHA sued them in housing court for non-payment of rent, including for rent that they shouldn't have charged them based on the change in their income.
This is a citywide issue and not just a problem with any one NYCHA project. It's really about the systems in place at NYCHA currently.
We definitely hope there's systemic change in NYCHA for every New York City public housing resident to not have to be concerned about being overcharged.
I follow the rules, process, and yet I have to go through this hardship. But I am confident that justice will be done.
A critical part of our housing practice, we try to bring system change-oriented litigation and advocacy so that we can have a higher impact with our resources and change those laws and change those practices and policies and protect an even greater number of tenants.
East Harlem is one of the neighborhoods where rents are increasing, income is not increasing, and gentrification is now taking over. People who have lived here for generations can no longer afford to live here.
I absolutely do not regret moving to East Harlem, but I do regret landing in an Emerald Equity property. Never in my life have I had to endure such disregard for my personal safety, the lack of heat and hot water, and hearing the rats underneath the floorboards just having a little party. The rats owned that was their building. We were just sort of sharing space.
I would have leaks in my bathroom, and the bathroom ceiling would literally cave in. You would think that they would come immediately to fix that. No, it took them months to do that.
We were without gas for over a year.
Just the conditions that they were living in and are still living in, it
deplorable.
In East Harlem, we're working with a number of buildings owned by a landlord called Emerald Equity Group. We've had several cases with them throughout the years. They had a business plan that was predicated on being able to harass out long-term rent-stabilized tenants in favor of newer gentrifying tenants who are paying market rents. It's kind of the model of what we call predatory equity.
There were large portions of the tenant body that had been on rent strike for quite some time, as they're permitted to do under New York State housing law. At the end of the day, if you don't have money, it's hard to continue to operate a building.
Tenants filed proof of claims in the bankruptcy case, alleging claims from racial discrimination to tenant harassment to rent overcharge to basic denial of repairs and services.
My hope is that we have a nonprofit developer steps in, purchases the building, and maintains it affordable for this community.
The fact that a real estate giant can be harmed by a bunch of people of color from East Harlem. I cannot thank you guys enough for all your support, your assistance, your advice.
I would like to take this opportunity to thank Legal Services for everything they've done. I couldn't have this level of confidence without your support.
Good evening. It was inspiring to watch that story of local heroes, including our own legal services staff. And now I have the distinct honor and pleasure to introduce another local hero, Secretary Jay Johnson. In 1949, Secretary Johnson's grandfather, Charles S. Johnson, a former president of Fisk University, noted sociologist, and a World War I Army veteran, was called to testify before the House Un-American Activities Committee. He was accused of being a threat to his country because he wrote about civil liberties. In response, Charles Johnson pointed out that, and I quote, "wanting the elimination of inequalities and racial discrimination is not wanting to subvert the government." Secretary Johnson has had an extraordinary career in and out of government, but it is as a public servant that he has truly made his mark. After a stint as general counsel of the Department of the Air Force under President Clinton, Secretary Johnson returned to the Pentagon as general counsel for the Department of the Defense. During his tenure, he co-authored the report that paved the way for the repeal of the military's discriminatory policy of don't ask, don't tell by Congress later that year. In 2013, Jay Johnson was confirmed as Secretary of Homeland Security. In that role, Secretary Johnson oversaw the third largest cabinet department and arguably the one with the most trying responsibilities. Secretary Johnson oversaw 22 federal agencies, including those responsible for counterterrorism, cybersecurity, border security, and federal disaster response. Former Defense Secretary Robert Gates described his colleague as, and I quote again, "the finest lawyer I have ever worked with in government, a straightforward, plain-speaking man of great integrity, with common sense to burn and a good sense of humor." Jay Johnson was born in New York City on September 11th, believe it or not. He graduated from Morehouse College and then from Columbia Law School. Soon after that, he joined Paul Weiss, Rifkin, Wharton, and Garrison, his professional home outside of government, where he is a partner still. His wisdom and guidance on issues of national and cybersecurity, data privacy, government relations, public policy, and civil rights are sought after by corporate clients and journalists alike. When I was in law school casting about for a job, it was litigation partner Jay Johnson on recruiting duty who lured me to Paul Weiss, and I'm still there too. Thank you, Jay. Since leaving government at the end of the Obama administration, Secretary Johnson has continued to fight the good fight. Last year, New York State Chief Judge Janet DiFiore appointed Secretary Johnson as a special advisor on equal justice in the courts and asked him to undertake a comprehensive review of racial bias in our court system. After a 5-month investigation, Secretary Johnson's report found a second-class system of justice for people of color in New York State, due in part to overburdened, overwhelmed, and under-resourced courts. The report's recommendations aimed at advancing diversity and inclusion within the New York State court system have been adopted in full. Among those recommendations, Secretary Johnson urged the New York State court system to embrace a robust zero-tolerance discrimination policy that specifically addresses racial bias, to develop and mandate comprehensive bias training with a strong focus on implicit bias, racial bias, and cultural sensitivity, to incorporate a segment on implicit bias in the orientation video shown to jurors, to create and implement new rules to allow for the questioning of prospective jurors about implicit bias, and to adopt jury instructions that explain the concept of implicit bias and remind jurors to be aware of their own biases. Secretary Johnson and LSNYC's work toward racial justice will surely continue, but will let his grandfather have the last word. Faith in the ultimate strength of the democratic philosophy and the code of the nation as a whole has always been stronger than the impulse to despair. These words ring as true today, and Secretary Johnson's career demonstrates their wisdom. Dedication and integrity are great qualities, but at their most powerful when in the service of hope. And now I'm thrilled to give you Jay Johnson.
Liza, thank you very much for that very, very generous introduction. And thank you, Legal Services of New York City, for this honor and this recognition this evening. It's a real pleasure to be here. I have a couple of thoughts that I'd like to share with you tonight. First, with each recognition that I have received in my career, I have undertaken to, in gratitude, serve as a champion and a spokesperson for that organization and its mission. Tonight, that ranges from organizations, including Legal Services in New York City, as well as the Ronald Reagan Presidential Library, from which I received the Ronald Reagan Peace Through Strength Award a couple of years ago. So this organization can count on me as one of your champions and great supporters. The other thing I want to say is this. Throughout the 4-month study that Liza mentioned, that Chief Judge DiFiore asked me to undertake, a group of Paul Weiss lawyers and I interviewed probably at least 300 people associated with the New York State court system. Judges on the New York State Court of Appeals, judges on the appellate division, the appellate term, Supreme Court, trial level, civil court judges, criminal court judges, housing court judges, civil court judges, town justices, district attorneys, ADAs, court officers, court clerks, criminal defense attorneys. And this is for the supporters of this organization to know. By far, the most passionate and dedicated lawyers that I spoke to in the course of this review were from the various legal services organizations around New York City that make up this organization. They were the most passionate, they were the most dedicated, they were the most conscientious in contributing to our report. And I want everyone who supports this organization to know that. The other thing I want to say is to the staff, to the attorneys on the ground, on the front lines every day in the courts of the New York State system. You folks champion criminal justice civil justice, racial justice, economic justice, immigrants' rights, LGBTQ rights, tenants' rights. When you add it all up, that is all the reasons people always tell me they went to law school, to champion the very things that you champion. The staff of legal services, frankly, are the epitome of the legal profession. I hope you never lose sight of that. I hope you never lose sight of the good cause that you decided to join. I know it is difficult. Day to day, it must be difficult. As you heard Liza say in my report that I issued last year, I talked about the reality of a second-class system of justice for people of color in New York State, who are your clients. It must be hard day to day. But like my grandfather, and you heard him quoted, I too believe in the faith and have faith in the ultimate strength of our democratic philosophy and the code of our nation, and believe that it has always been stronger than the impulse to despair. And I hope you do too. Thank you for listening. Thank you for recognizing me tonight. And please keep up the good fight. Thank you.
Hello, Jazz for Justice. Scott Robinson here with Helen's Song. It's our privilege to play for you. Thank you for having us. We're going to play an old song that is a kind of a sweet song that I thought of because of all the people we've lost over this last year. It's called Maybe You'll Be There.
Hi, I'm Miriam Buell, Pro Bono Counsel at Weil, Gotshal and Manges. Thank you so much for joining us this evening, and special thanks and congratulations to the awardees, Martin Lebwohl and Jay Johnson, my fellow WBGO Jazz Leadership Society member. It's a great honor for me to introduce the video about legal services housing work. Weil has a robust pro bono program that covers a lot of ground, but we do try to take on as many housing matters as we possibly can because we know that, especially in New York, for low-income New Yorkers, housing is the issue. And I really, really know how valuable a good, strong pro bono partnership can be. It was a game changer for me to watch the fair housing trial in Yonkers play out in the mid-1980s in federal court. That case made me want to be a lawyer. So I became a housing counselor to homeless families. I did housing discrimination testing. During my 1L summer, I joined the Legal Services Office in the Bronx on the housing team. And after graduation, I joined the Brooklyn Neighborhood Office of the Legal Aid Society as a housing attorney. Eventually, I ended up as the executive director of the Westchester County Fair Housing Office. During those early years, what I saw, what I heard, what I felt changed my view entirely about becoming an attorney. I realized just how out of reach our legal system is to those whom it purports to protect. They would get nowhere without an attorney, and that's not right. Low-income tenants in New York City often struggle with appalling housing conditions. New York City's own public housing, home to 400,000 tenants, is in wretched disrepair, and solutions are tied up in strangulating red tape. Legal services attorneys only have so many hours in the day, and the organizations like them are turning away potential clients because of limited resources, both human and financial. But pro bono help can go a long way here. Legal services knows how to train us, how to mobilize us, how to guide us so that we can do our best to help them help our mutual clients. And we can free them up. We can free up their expertise, their energy, their smarts, so that they can go to the front line, to the cutting edge, where they need to be as experts. And pro bono is a two-way street. I've seen it time and time again, how my Weil colleagues have had their eyes wide opened by the experience of working as a team with their clients, with their legal services colleagues on pro bono advocacy for change. And there is no better organization to unleash that power of change, of advocacy, than legal services. Last year, Weil and a number of firms joined forces with legal services on a new housing initiative to address housing repair cases where conditions had made housing uninhabitable for low-income tenants. So last year alone, we were all able to take on almost 300 of these cases on behalf of low-income tenants. You're going to hear about this initiative now. I want to thank, in particular, Adam Heinz and Jim McCormick for their incredible commitment and leadership and guidance to all the rest of us who will do anything with them. Really, they're incredible. They're the best. And also to all legal services staff and attorneys and board, thank you. Thank you so much. What a difference you make. What a privilege it is to work with you on making this change. Have a great night.
There are so many cases in New York City and in New York State where landlords are abusing their tenants, leaving them without heat and leaving them without water. They allow their tenants to live in deplorable conditions, and it's completely against the law.
Housing is the biggest practice area at Legal Services NYC on the staff side, but unfortunately in the pro bono world in New York, it's never become a staple for law firm volunteers to take on. We've been working really hard over the last few years to change that.
Pro bono is critical. As lawyers, we have an obligation to help our society move forward. And the best way to do that in a city that we all love is to help those citizens who need our help the most. And when you're thinking about all of the many ways that low-income people need help, for me, I think housing is one of the most important areas of life that if you have a stable home, you can use that as a base to deal with almost all of your other challenges.
It's a serious crisis, especially in our city, where tenants are living in apartments that are in disrepair. Landlords aren't doing what they need to do to fix these places.
The day before it happens, I told them it's gonna rain, will you please fix and seal everything? My grandkids, they couldn't come to see me because it wasn't safe to come to my apartment. Home is everything to me. You know, it's supposed to be my heaven. It wasn't heaven. If it's not heaven, it had to be hell. So it was hell living in my apartment. I told my lawyer, that I have problems with the roof. And as soon as I told him that, the same day I had a call from management. The next day, a roofer came. I mean, just like that, right away.
Our client was a young woman and her partner. During the pandemic, they were quarantined at home in absolutely unfathomable living conditions. There was a rat infestation, there was mold that needed to be remediated, the floorboards were coming up, like you name it, and it was wrong with their apartment. We partnered with amazing, incredible partners at Legal Services NYC, housing attorneys who just did an excellent job of making us feel supported and giving us the tools to navigate a process we weren't familiar with. And we were able to very easily get a order for the landlord to fix the problems, and it was an incredibly rewarding process just to, in a short time, make such a meaningful difference.
The work that attorneys are doing with legal services and as employees at legal services, it's the most important work that we can do, particularly as we're currently living in this pandemic.
Our clients are incredibly resilient, and in working with our pro bono partners to bring these types of cases to go on the offense against bad landlords, they're really able to build a kind of tenant power amongst their neighbors and their community. And that's something that can have a real impact long after the resolution of a single proceeding.
New York is an extraordinary city, and it is built on the backs of a lot of outstanding people, but there's a great deal of inequity as well. And we want to make sure that rights are balanced. Economic growth does not often have to come at the expense of those who did build the city.
Thank you guys for your help. I feel like part of the family. I feel like, man, I had somebody to back me up, I had somebody that was looking out for me.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining tonight's celebration of LSNYC. I'm Jenny Mintz, a lawyer at the D.E. Shaw Group, a founding member of LSNYC's Associate Pro Bono Board, and a longtime supporter of LSNYC. I'm honored to introduce Martin Lebwohl tonight. Martin asked me not to say anything nice about him in these remarks, but as anybody who knows Martin can attest, that will be a difficult task, as I have many wonderful things to say about him. Martin is a brilliant lawyer, precise, inquisitive, and thoughtful. He is an excellent teacher and always inspires me to take my work a step further, to ask the next question, look around the next corner, and plan for any eventuality. It should come as no surprise, then, that when we were initially discussing working with LSNYC on pro bono efforts, Martin's response was, in essence, let's do this and more. We began our partnership with LSNYC around 18 months ago, and yet in that relatively short time, Martin's enthusiasm and support have equipped us to quickly scale up our program, enabling dozens of our staff to collectively contribute hundreds of hours of volunteer time and empowering even some of our most junior team members to spearhead pro bono clinics. Martin himself has attended each of our pro bono clinics to date, and each time we plan new initiatives, Martin's response is the same. Let's do this and more. Martin's goal of continuing to increase our pro bono reach aligns with LSNYC's goals to address the most pressing problems facing low-income New Yorkers. Working with LSNYC, our team is helping New Yorkers seeking asylum, name changes, and citizenship. With the guiding principle of let's do this and more, I look forward to seeing how much more good we can do as we continue to grow our pro bono program at the D.E. Shaw Group and our partnership with LSNYC. I'm delighted to celebrate and introduce Martin Lebwohl as co-honoree of the 2021 LSNYC Jazz for Justice Award.
Thank you, Jenny, for that kind introduction. I'm so happy to be with you all tonight to support the work of LSNYC in fighting for justice for the most vulnerable members of our community. I also want to thank all of the lawyers who served on the benefit committee for your outstanding work raising funds in connection with tonight's event. As a lawyer, it's deeply humbling to be in the company tonight of Secretary Jay Johnson, whose public service has been an inspiration to us all. I have to confess that when Adam Heinz approached me about being honored tonight, I thought there'd been some sort of mistake. I assure you all, as I assured him, that I'm undeserving of any special recognition. But after Adam politely but persistently twisted my arm, I agreed, for two reasons. One is that this event gives me an opportunity to emphasize how incredibly important and deserving of support LSNYC's mission is. And the second is that I want to highlight the role that the private bar, including both law firms and the legal departments of their clients, can play in helping LSNYC fulfill that mission. We continue to face a crisis in this country in terms of equal access to justice. In more than 75% of all civil trials in the United States, at least one litigant doesn't have a lawyer. And in some courts, the numbers are even worse. In New York City, more than 90% of the litigants in child support matters in family court are unrepresented by counsel. What does that say about our justice system? As everyone who has ever seen an episode of Law & Order knows, if a person is accused of a felony and can't afford a lawyer, the state must provide them with one. But for anyone who has a vital interest at stake in a civil proceeding, like a survivor of domestic violence seeking a protective order to ensure her safety, an immigrant at risk of deportation seeking to preserve his legal right to remain in this country, or a mother or father facing permanent loss of parental rights, that person has no legal right to counsel if they can't afford one. And the question of whether that person will have access to a lawyer depends on whether LSNYC or a similar organization has enough resources to help them. Right now, there's about even odds that they will or they won't have those resources. More than half of the low-income Americans who approach LSC-funded legal organizations for civil legal assistance, nearly 2 million people every year, will be turned away simply because of a lack of resources. This is where the private bar has the responsibility and the ability to help. And under Adam's leadership, LSNYC has launched and grown an exceptional program to harness the talents and energy of the private bar to enable LSNYC to help more New Yorkers. LSNYC offers approximately 70 clinics and study groups each year, during which lawyers in private practice can receive training and immediately provide pro bono legal counsel to LSNYC clients. I am so proud of and grateful to my colleagues in the D.E. Shaw Group's Legal and Compliance Department, 29 of whom have participated in LSNYC's pro bono clinics and continued representation of LSNYC clients over the past year. It's their service that deserves an award, and it's on my colleagues' behalf that I'm honored to accept tonight's recognition. Together with LSNYC, they have helped low-income individuals applying for citizenship, victims of crime seeking protected immigration status, LGBTQ and HIV-positive immigrants pursuing asylum, and transgender clients seeking to change their legal names and gender markers. I really can't stress enough how rewarding it is to work with these clients. When you meet them, you need to be prepared for tears. Sometimes those tears are about fear, and sometimes those tears are about hope, But all of those tears signify how urgent and deeply meaningful LSNYC's work is to the lives of its clients. If you're participating in tonight's event and you work at a law firm, you're probably already doing pro bono work with LSNYC, and that's terrific. But one way you can amplify and extend your impact is to reach out to your clients. Offer to partner with them in staffing a pro bono clinic with LSNYC. The legal departments of your paying clients are filled with talented and capable people who are eager to help. We at D.E. Shaw have so enjoyed working on pro bono matters with the fine lawyers at Debevoise and Plimpton, Skadden, and Patterson-Belknap this year, and we're looking forward to doing more pro bono work with them and our other law firms. I want to extend a special thanks tonight to my co-general counsel, Dave Sweet, and our chief compliance officer, Nathan Thomas, for their partnership and their commitment to serving the community. I also want to thank my colleagues Jenny Mintz and Matthew Hatton-Poole for their dedicated efforts driving our firm's pro bono activities and ensuring that our commitment to pro bono continues to gather momentum and grow. Finally, on a personal note, I want to express my gratitude to my parents, Oscar and Vita Lebwohl, and my wife Jill, who I'm so happy are participating virtually tonight. I'm sure they are all quite bewildered at seeing me being honored for something, but nonetheless, I want to thank them for their love and support and for being role models to me in their values, their kindness, and their service to others. And to my 3 favorite children, Charlie, Eli, and Jenny, who I hope are still watching, thanks for not only making me laugh every day, but also for giving me reason to look to the future with hope and optimism. And finally, thank you to all of you for participating in tonight's event and supporting LSNYC. And thank you last but not least to Ron, Adam, and the rest of the amazing leadership and staff of LSNYC for your continuing heroic work to make the promise of justice real for the most marginalized and vulnerable groups in our community.
The need of income-challenged New Yorkers for legal assistance has never been greater, especially in our city, which is struggling to recover from a pandemic.
The pandemic has laid bare long-standing oppression, long-standing economic inequality. The folks who are affected by that inequality are people of color.
Legal Services NYC has always been a first responder in times of crisis.
Legal Services NYC provides a safety net for the most vulnerable members of our community. It enables them to obtain housing benefits, freedom from unfair discrimination, protection from violence. We are the largest provider of free civil legal services in the nation. These aren't luxuries, these are our basic human rights.
Our clients are generally at or below 200% of the federal poverty line. The federal poverty line is just under $13,000 a year for an individual. It takes incredible grit and resilience to make it on that kind of income. That said, when you're poor, you face legal challenges that people who are middle income or upper income simply don't face. And that means that they need lawyers to fight for them.
We need to do the day-to-day work that we have been doing for 50 years, but we need to also meet the challenge of the times.
We've all experienced over the past year devastating impacts of the COVID crisis. We're all hoping that we're seeing a light at the end of the tunnel. Maybe the world will be a little different when we come out of this crisis. Maybe there'll be more hope, more fairness, and more justice.
Justice to me means equality for all.
Justice to me means more than adequate representation for all.
Protecting and securing basic human rights.
Demand justice.
Justice to me means that a person's rights under law are respected.
Justice to me means a society where basic human needs are guaranteed.
Demand justice.
Justice to me means actively doing what is right.
Demand justice.
Justice to me means having your voice heard.
People being able to afford to live in New York City.
The liberation of all people.
Demand justice.
Justice to me means equal access to resources and safety in New York City.
Demand justice.
Being able to vindicate your rights.
Equal access to safe, sanitary living conditions.
Demand justice.
Exigimos justicia.
Demand justice.
Demand justice.
Demand justice.
Demand justice.
Legal Services NYC demands justice for all New Yorkers.
Good evening, everyone.
My name is Anna Malendez, and I serve on the board of Legal Services NYC. On behalf of the board, staff, and clients that we serve every day, thank you so much for joining us this evening. With your support, our amazing and hardworking staff have helped more than 100,000 low-income New York City residents in the past year. We have helped people stay in their homes, receive life-saving benefits, achieve immigration stability, and so much more. Please join me in acknowledging and thanking our staff who have worked tirelessly during an incredibly challenging year to fight for and improve the lives of countless New Yorkers and their families who are living in poverty. A huge thanks also to our law firm and corporate partners who have donated thousands of pro bono hours, enabling us to expand our services and reach even more New Yorkers in need. Congratulations to our honorees, Jay Johnson and Martin Lebwohl, and thank you for your unwavering support and dedication to our mission. Thank you all once again for standing with us to demand justice for all New Yorkers. And now, please welcome back Stanley Jordan and Scott Robinson and Helen Sung Quartet for our last musical set.
This next song is one of my original compositions called Everybody's Waltz. I hope you enjoy it.
you.